On behalf of the American Institute of Professional Geologists, welcome to today's webinar. It's going to be on the confidence gap. So today's webinar is going to be presented by my colleague at Stantec, Kelly Greaser. My name is Anna Sutton. I'm coming to you from the Chicago area. I currently serve as the AIPG Illinois Indiana section president, and I also chair AIPG's National Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I'm going to serve as moderator during today's webinar. I'll quickly cover some introductory material and then turn the presentation over to our speaker. So just a few housekeeping items to cover. Today's webinar is going to be 1 hour, and we are recording the event. You will be able to download today's presentation slides at the AIPG website in the Members Only Resources tab. We look forward to your questions and feedback throughout today's webinar. You are welcome to send in a question anytime using the chat box or raise your hand during the Q&A session. In some cases, we might get right back to you with an answer, but in other cases, we may put the question to today's speaker at the end of the presentation. For those of you that might be new to the Institute, more information about AIPG is available on our website, which is aipg.org. We have lots of great info on the website, including a job board and a calendar of all of our upcoming events. And if you'd like to become more involved in AIPG, please feel free to reach out to me or any of the contacts you find on the website. I think that's all I have for intro. I'm now excited to turn over today's presentation to our speaker, Kelly Greaser. Thank you for joining us, Kelly.
Thanks, Anna. So like Anna said, I'm Kelly Greaser, and I work with her at Stantec. And today we wanted to talk about the confidence gap. First, what is it? What causes it? How does it influence our behavior? And most importantly, how do we close the gap? How do we move past it? So first of all, I wanted to just put up a few resources. Of course, there are a ton of resources on the internet. This is just, oops, let me get my cursor out of the way. This is just a few of them. This is where I started. The first article is actually, it's a really long, but I think it's a really good article. And a lot of this presentation, the content is from that article. And then the next two items listed are books by two of the authors of that article. So they go into the subject in more depth. And then there's a TED Talk. Of course, I'm sure there's plenty of TED Talks about this topic, but this is one in particular that I like. And then there's an article. There's just the title of it, and I'll talk one of the last slides. I'll show you an algorithm that's explained in that article, so you can go to the article, if you want more information. And then lastly, there's a couple of different articles from Harvard Business Review. Again, there's a ton of resources on the internet, but if you want to dive more into this topic after this webinar, this is a good place to start. So first of all, what is the confidence gap? I mean, first of all, what is confidence, right? So just two straight definitions from the dictionary. Confidence is a feeling or consciousness of one's own power or reliance on one's circumstances. So it's, do you have trust in yourself? Full trust, belief in powers, trustworthiness, or reliability of a person or a thing. And in this case, we're talking about reliability of your own self, not necessarily trust of another person. I mean, confidence in another person, that's a different issue. We're talking about trust of yourself, your ability in business. So question to the audience, I'm not going to actually ask, but just stop and think, how much confidence do you think it typically takes a man in order to proceed with a decision? Make a decision, take a risk, move forward, ask for a promotion, something like that. So just think about it. A typical man, and in this entire talk, we are going to talk about stereotypes, typical people. And a lot of the numbers, a lot of the information here is backed up by research. It's stereotypes. Of course, there are people that break the mold, but we're going to talk about most people in order to learn more about, ourselves. How much confidence do you think the typical male needs to move forward with a decision? The answer is generally within about 60 or 70%. So most men need only have about 60 or 70% confidence that making a decision, moving forward will result in success. And then most men will actually move forward and take that step, take that risk. How much confidence does the typical woman need? More, less, research shows the typical woman needs about 90 to 95% confidence to move forward with a decision. It's actually a huge difference. And I'm going to, show you some information, various reasons why that is. And, we'll go through a lot. If you understand, why women typically need more confidence to move forward, then that's how literally we can close the gap. More on what the confidence gap is. There's a lot of different words for it. It's doubting yourself, second guessing yourself, striving for perfectionism, right? Confidence gap, you can equate it to trying being perfectionist because you think that anything less than perfectionism isn't good enough. Focusing on past failures, focusing on what's in the past rather than trying to move forward and continue to move forward to success. Sense of not belonging. I don't deserve this position. I shouldn't be here. I didn't earn this, something like that. Letting fear control too much. Imposter syndrome. That's another term that you'll hear. Like literally, am I an imposter here? People are going to find out I'm not qualified for this job. I can't do this. A lot of things like that. Evidence shows women are less self-assured than men. But to succeed, confidence matters just as much as competence. And I'll go through a lot of different things. The research shows women can be just as competent, just as capable to do a job, but it's lack of confidence that holds them back. So last week, unfortunately, we lost a trailblazer in our country, in the world, really, Sandra Day O'Connor. She was the first female justice of the Supreme Court. Now think about the record of a justice. Her record is in writing. Her judgments, she literally, judges have to write a ton, right? It's not just this, recommendations from people, this kind of idea of judges' performance. Judges' performance are in writing. She was nominated by President Reagan, got all the way, obviously got through the confirmation process, which is like a gauntlet, right? First female, of course, probably had a lot more thrown at her maybe than normal. And then even after, she went through that process, there was an interview that was only like 10 or 15 years ago. She'd been on the bench for over 20 years at that point. And she admitted that when she first started, she was worried that she wouldn't do a good enough job. And good enough was her words. That's the confidence gap. That's imposter syndrome. That's the feeling of your record is out there. Other people know that you're going to do a great job. You went through this gauntlet of nomination process. You got through, and she was still concerned whether she would be good enough to do the job. That's the confidence gap. That's imposter syndrome. So how can a lack of confidence be harmful in the workplace? Well, if you see a woman hesitating, you think women are hesitant, timid, holding back, not taking risks, or even incapable of doing a job, depending on what that job is. None of that is actually true. It's just that in some cases, and I'll show you, women are wired differently. We're brought up differently. So the more we know about this, then we can literally, for women or other people that may suffer from confidence issues, we can combat it. Or allies, if you see somebody suffering from a lack of confidence, you can support them, you can help them. So this is all about understanding more about it in order to combat it and get through it, get past it, and overcome. So what causes it? It's both nature and nurture. And we'll go through each. So the part of the nurture part, it starts as early as on the playground. I mean, believe it or not, how we treat our kids. Think about what happens on a playground with boys. It's normal for them to roughhouse, tease, name call, push each other down, fight, get in a little scuffle. That's okay with boys. It's not okay, but it becomes normalized. If a boy gets called a name, at first, that boy might start crying, but then the boys have to get used to it. Parents are like, just, brush it off, and get up and move on. So boys, learn that these criticisms lose their power slowly, bit by bit. It starts on the playground that getting called a name is not the end of the world. Getting pushed down, getting in a little tussle, it's not the end of the world. But what happens a girl on a playground or at a park. You pull a girl's hair or you call a girl a name. What happens? Oh, no, 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 no. You can't, you have to be nice to girls. You can't tease a girl. You can't call a girl a name. So girls don't, literally lose that fear of that criticism. It's slowly, it starts early. Boys, really it's these tiny steps, but girls are almost treated with kid gloves. And so when criticisms happen later in life, they haven't had this slow breakdown of criticisms or failure. And it literally builds up through life. In elementary school, girls were rewarded for being good instead of being energetic, rambunctious, and pushy. So, what happens when a girl knows an answer? The arm goes up and she's able to, provide the answer and everything's good. So, but the problem is being a good girl doesn't prepare us for the real world. Business is very different than schoolwork. Literally, the rules change somewhere in between. And the transition from being a girl to being a woman, nobody told us, hey, now you have to be completely different. One of the quotes from the first paper said, if life were one long grade school, women would be the undisputed rulers of the world. The challenge is the real world isn't grade school. And that's it can be a challenge for a lot of women. Even throughout life, as boys grow into men, boys absorb scolding and punishment and learn to take failure in stride. So, like I said, it's these small steps. It starts on the playground, it gets to sports. They learn to take these failures, they learn to take these criticisms. Eventually, when they get to the business world, and adult men, they let these criticisms slide off their backs easier than most women do. In sports, especially, girls lose confidence. They may quit competing in sports, and then they deprive themselves of that ability to just learn that failure is part of life. They lose those small increments of getting used to criticisms and failures. And there's actually a direct link. It's been shown. Women who played sports in high school have a larger salary as adults. They can stand up for themselves better. They learn failure is just a part of success. If you don't try, you won't succeed. If you don't try, you won't fail either. But if you don't try, you're definitely not going to succeed. And women who play sports, again, it's this small step of just literally, encompassing or pulling in failures and realizing it's part of life. Learning to own victory and survive defeats is training for owning triumphs and surviving setbacks at work. Again, the more you learn outside of work, it's going to be better prepare you for business, all the risks that you may need to take in business. And like I said, somewhere between the classroom and the cubicle, the rules change. And nobody bothered to tell women. And so now sometimes in business, women are, we're at a disadvantage. We're behind the eight ball. The requirements for adult success are different and women's confidence takes a beating. Again, the difference between, how we treat our children, what it's like to be a child, what we encourage in school versus then getting into the business world. So the nature part of it. So that was the nurture part of it. The nature part of it is there really truly are differences in biology between men and women. So there's differences in the brain. The women activate the amygdala complex, the fear center, more often than men. And then the cingulate complex, that's the worry wart center of the brain, is larger in women and men. Why is that? Think about, the evolution, the animal world. With most species on the planet, the female species is responsible for child rearing. In order to make sure that your children grow up, you have to protect them. So you have to look out for dangers. So in order to better look out for dangers, you are just inherently, it means you're going to be more fearful. Men hunt, women take care of the family. So again, the women have a benefit to look for danger, look for threats, look for those things that would generate fear. It ends up being a mixed blessing in today's world. In a business where, you may need to take risks to be successful, a woman may naturally, just biologically, she's not set up as well as men are to take risks. Estrogen encourages bonding and connection while discouraging conflict and risk-taking, and that may hinder confidence in some contexts. There's also quite a few studies showing the influence of testosterone. There was one about the tracked investment folks, and the men would peak in their testosterone right after they made some big risky stock purchase. And so testosterone fuels what looks like male confidence, and women don't have as much testosterone as men. So again, there are these biological differences between men and women that end up meaning that women can be less confident. How does it influence behavior? Perfectionism versus confidence. They're actually kind of tied together. You can be a perfectionist, and they're really related. It also leads to a lack of confidence. Women overwork to get everything right and think that'll pay off. We constantly ruminate, obsess over one thing. I can't tell you some emails. It's like after the fifth time reading an email and trying to change, one word. I mean, it just gets back to that perfectionism. Women have a natural thought to let men speak more and do more. It's normal to feel nervous, but you can't let it hold you back. And again, it's when we get to how to close the gap, it's knowing this information and then figuring out maybe when you need to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. And a lot of times, a little bit of overconfidence is good. And again, confidence can be more valuable than competence. A lot of studies show that women are just as competent, capable to do a job, but it's the lack of confidence that holds them back compared to a man with, similar skill set. Men genuinely believe they are good. It's not fake confidence. And this will come up, along with some of the other bullets. Men think on-the-job training is expected. And yet women think, oh, if I don't already have the skills, then I can't possibly, take on that promotion or take on that task lead or take on that new project. They think they already have to know everything and have to know how to do the job. So it's not that men are overconfident. They just accept that they're going to learn, in the process. Men initiate salary negotiations 4 times more than women. And then even when women do initiate salary negotiations, they ask for 30% less. Again, in research, when asked, women believe they should earn 20% less than what men believe they should earn. And that's in, blind studies saying, what do you think the value of your job is? There was a study a while ago, Hewlett Packard actually shared salaries of folks. Of course, women realized, hey, why is there a disparity? And after they shared salaries, then women started speaking up more and saying, hey, I deserve a raise. And that really helped with the equality. And I mean, this kind of research shows in a blind study, women will, ask for less to begin with and ask for a raise less often. Compared with men, women don't consider themselves as ready for promotions. Again, they think that they have to have 100% of the qualifications to be able to, apply for a promotion or apply for a new job or apply for a particular project or whatever. And they'll predict they'll do worse on tests and generally underestimate the abilities. And the exact opposite is true for men. They will predict that they will do better on tests or at least equal to their competence. So again, it's just this lack of confidence. Women are always questioning their abilities. Women underrate their true competence, again, due to lack of confidence. Men overestimate abilities, women underestimate both. But even if their performances are exactly, their competence is exactly the same. Overqualified and overprepared women still hold back. So again, this example here, women and men apply for jobs with different skill sets. Women typically will only apply for a job when they have 100% of the skills. They think, oh, well, all of these qualifications were listed, and surely these are requirements. If I don't have all of these skills, then I can't possibly apply for this job. And men apply when they only have 60% of the skills. Because men think, what, learning on the job is normal. I can learn on the job. It'll be part of it. It's okay. But women are not totally competent. If women think they're not totally competent in an area, so they're just not going to apply for it. And again, that's a lot of what holds women back. Men think less about judging their own performance. They just don't have that, that outside criticism. They tend to be less perfectionist compared to women. Do men doubt themselves sometimes? Of course they do, but they don't let it stop them as often as women do. Men actually tilt toward overconfidence, but they do it naturally. They're not consciously trying to fool. Most men aren't consciously trying to fool anybody. It's actually honest overconfidence. Again, it's just this, rationalization of competence that it's actually more developed, better developed, more realistic in men compared to women. So we know in business, some individuals tend to be admired and listened to more than others. It's not, and they're not necessarily the most knowledgeable or capable. They're actually the most self-assured. So again, it's that confidence coming through. Confidence can sometimes actually be more important than competence. You can actually have somebody who may be underqualified, but if they're overconfident, they can still be more successful. When people are confident, regardless of how good they actually are, they display confident nonverbal and verbal behavior. So, somebody in a room, they're speaking up more, they're providing their opinion, they give off, the nonverbal signals of confidence. And yet somebody who's not confident, they're giving off nonverbal signals that they aren't confident. They may speak with a higher tone of voice. They're not making eye contact. They may be looking at the floor a lot. And that's lack of confidence. And that comes through. I mean, we can all pick it up. And I'm not gonna go through all of this. You all will get the presentation. I definitely want to get to the how to close the gap part, and then hopefully have a discussion. Hopefully, if you all have some input or have some experiences you'd like to share. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these bullets. It's just a lot of information, but you all can look at it later. Men, a lot of times, if they run into a challenge, if they happen to, not progress well in a project, they actually recognize, okay, that didn't go well, that particular decision failed, then men will attribute that to external causes. They'll say, well, that was a tough class, it was a tough project, it was a tough client, it was a tough task, whatever. They say the reason for that failure is external to them. And yet women, a lot of times, will internalize that failure and say, I wasn't good enough. That failure was all my fault. And again, that's this self-preceding, just you get on the hamster wheel and you can't get off. And it can be debilitating. Women watch their male colleagues take risks while we hold back because we're unsure that we're ready and that we're perfectly qualified. And again, it's a self-feeding system. We hold back first, and then the next time it's harder to move forward. Perfect is the enemy of good. How many times I always try and remind myself of this because I am a perfectionist. It wastes time. When is good enough good to proceed? And women have a tendency to focus on that. How do we close the gap? The good news is confidence can be acquired. It takes effort. Literally keep all this information in mind. Again, if you're somebody who, if you're faced with a decision, you have an opportunity to become a task lead or ask for a promotion or take a new position, take a new job, whatever. Think about all this and decide, are you, if you're holding back, are you holding back simply because, maybe you have lack of confidence, or is it actually for good reasons? And I'll go through an algorithm here at the end. But anyway, like I said, the good news is confidence can be acquired. So consider all this information, pull it all together and maybe make a decision to move forward, put yourself outside of your normal comfort zone. And then that's how we're going to start closing that confidence gap. And like I said before, and we all know this, but it's hard sometimes to remind ourselves. If you don't try, you will not succeed. You will not progress. You won't fail either, but you're going to stay where you are. Do you want to stay where you are, or do you want to try and progress? Failure is a part of success. You can't be 100% successful all the time. If you acknowledge all of this information, you understand it, you literally process it, then you can make a decision to change or not. If your gut is telling you, oh my gosh, I do not want to take on this opportunity, I'm not 100% confident that it's going to work. Maybe, go through this thought process and decide whether it's worth it to move forward, even if it pushes you outside of your normal comfort zone. Back to those after school specials. Knowledge is power, right? So the more you understand about this, you can use that to make a different decision or move forward. Success correlates just as closely with confidence as it does competence. Again, you can be perfectly competent, capable of doing a job, but if you're not confident to move forward, then you're just going to stay where you are. So you have to have the confidence to be able to take risks, to be able to ask for promotions, take on a new job, things like that. So they really do go hand in hand. And confidence is literally the instigation in you that turns into actions. If actions involve something scary, then yeah, maybe courage is needed. You're going to have to give yourself a boost and say, I've got to go forward with this, even if I'm not 100% confident that it's going to work. If it's difficult, a strong will to persist might also be needed. It's not just one initial action. You may have to tell yourself at several steps along the way. It's like, yeah, this is going to be a challenge. And you're going to have to, sum up the energy and the strength to just get through. Anger, intelligence, creativity can play a role. If you're putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, can you brainstorm? What else can you do differently? How can you do things differently moving forward, maybe than you have in the past? Confidence is essential. It applies in more situations. We're all, in business, how many times do we know the answer? We don't. A lot of times we're figuring things out new for the first time. So that's not necessarily competence. That's not capability, because you're figuring out something new. But it's the confidence to move forward, to keep trying, to figure out what the answer is, to make our client happy, whatever our business is. Confidence is the factor that turns thoughts into judgments, what we're capable of, transforms those judgments into action. Again, that's what helps us move forward. Confidence and action are related. Confidence is the belief in one's ability to succeed, and that belief stimulates action. Taking action bolsters the belief of ability to succeed. Again, you get on the hamster wheel, and if you move forward in one particular choice and you succeed, then that gives you more confidence to do it again. But the opposite is true. If you hold back and don't take an action, then the next time you have an opportunity, you might hold back again. They're both hamster wheels. Once you get on them, they're both self-feeding. Confidence accumulates through hard work, success, and failure, as long as you can analyze those failures appropriately and not over-obsess on them. The natural result of low confidence is inaction. When women hesitate because we aren't sure, we hold ourselves back. And again, I can't emphasize enough, everything in this presentation, it's one thing for women to understand this, but also it would be helpful for men or people who have confidence versus people who don't have confidence. The people who have confidence, if you encounter a situation where you have a colleague or maybe a direct report who's suffering from a lack of confidence, you can support that person. You can tell that person, hey, what's going on here? Why are you holding back? And if you find out, drill down, you might find out that it is a lack of confidence, and getting that support from other people can really help. So this is where allies can really help, support somebody who's suffering from lack of confidence. So when women do act, even if it's because they're forced to, they perform typically just as well as men do. Because again, the competence, the capability is there. If they push themselves or they're pushed by, some other means, a lot of times they'll still do great. Women and men, after being told they had done well, improve dramatically on a subsequent test. So again, this is some of that research, giving blind tests. You give a blind test to two sets of groups, and regardless of the actual results of those tests, you tell women and men that they did well on the previous test, then they move forward and continue to do well, regardless of whether they actually did well on the first test. So again, it's that hamster wheel. If women think they are succeeding, you tell them, hey, you're doing a great job. I really think you can take on this new task lead, this promotion, this new job. You give them that confidence, then they, are more confident to move on, and they're going to do just as well. To become more confident, women need to stop thinking so much and just act. Again, it's the overthinking, it's the perfectionism, it's, am I good enough? Do I belong here? Do I deserve this? It's just a lot of overthinking of a ton of things. And sometimes you just got to say stop and just move forward and get it done. Women judge their own performance worse than it actually is, and men judge their performance better than it actually is. Again, this is all based on research, so it's pretty interesting. One of the last line of the first chapter in the book Lean In is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And then she said, and then go do it. Try not to let that fear hold you back. What would you do if you weren't afraid of it? And then just go do it. Don't let that fear control. Support each other. Tell women they do belong, they have the skills, they can succeed. And again, this is women helping women or allies helping women as well. Evaluate the real consequences of failure and then decide to proceed or not. And that's the next slide, that algorithm from that one article that I had on the resources page. Don't focus on the causes of failure, learn from it and move on. Failure is a part of success. Failure is a part of life. We can't be 100% successful. It's just not realistic. Evaluate the failure to learn positively and then just move on. Let it go. Let it be in the past. And it's easier to say that than actually do it. Take an opportunity and make the opportunity fit you. So what does that mean? You take on a new job and the job description said you have to do A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z. Well, maybe you get in there and you realize, you know what? Instead of item C, I'm going to revise it and I'm going to make it mine and I'm going to make it item D. Business is constantly moving. I know you can think of examples in your own head of where somebody took on a new position and they kind of adjusted that position to fit them. We can all do that. As long as it's good for the business, you don't have to fit an exact job description or task description or whatever. Control perfectionism. This is something I definitely struggle with. This is the source of my own lack of confidence. It's just overdoing and redoing something, a gazillion times, obsessing too much that, it's not perfect. Make a decision and move on. Perfectionism takes too long. Absolutely takes too long. You'll never get there. You will never get to perfectionism. You will never be happy. You just have to find a way to let it go and just move on. You'll be conscious of the failure of not getting there. Controlling perfectionism is a big issue for some people. And I think I said this before, even when forced to act, women perform just as well as men do. So again, the competence is there. It's just lack of confidence to move forward. So here's that algorithm that's in the one paper that was on the list of resources, just the title of that paper. And so it's an algorithm to support decision making. And the scoring system doesn't matter as long as you just use the same set of scores. So score everything from 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, whatever you want, but score each of these subjects. First of all, skill capacity. Do you have the skill to take this risk with a client or take on a task lead or take on a promotion, ask for a promotion and then actually work like you deserve it, right? Do you have the skill to take on this new thing, whatever that thing is? What's your probability of success? What's the return on success? And what are your gut instincts? Do you think you can actually do well at this? And this especially, again, based on everything we've already been talking about, this is where, somebody suffering from a lack of confidence may underscore that one far too much. So you score all those items on the top, add them all up, and you get a total score. Then on the bottom, what are your skill gaps? What are you going to have to learn along the way? And just because you're not, perfectly prepared, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Is it manageable or not? On-the-job training is a normal thing. What's your probability of failure? And try very hard not to overemphasize that. Really sit down and be critical. What do you really think the chances of failure are? What's the real cost of failure? And this is something I struggle with. I had to get past, if I was going to do something and if I had to redo work, that was the end of the world for me. If I didn't get something right the first time. It's like, you know what? What's the real cost of failure? Okay, so guess what? I have to spend an extra night working on something, fixing something because, it didn't work out the first time. Was my boss going to be overly critical of me because I fixed it in the long run? Like as long as I don't go down rabbit hole and burn budget and burn schedule. But it was just that self-criticism of perfectionism. I didn't get it right the first time. But the true cost of failure was just my own self-criticism. It wasn't criticism from my colleagues or my boss. So that cost of failure, I have always, overinflated in my head. What's the true cost of failure? If it's just your own self-criticism, get over it. If the true cost of failure could be you're risking a relationship with an important client, okay, maybe we need to stop and think about that one. Assess what the true cost of failure is. And then what are your potential blind spots? And you might need help on that one. I mean, if you could identify all the blind spots, then they wouldn't be a blind spot, right? So maybe if you're going through a decision, hopefully you have a trusted colleague that you can go through this algorithm with. And then again, all of the issues on the bottom, add them up. What's the total score? And it's as simple as if the score on top exceeds the score on the bottom, move forward, do it, get it done. So these are 15 things confident people do, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is where I hope that we can start having a discussion. People can ask questions, and if you have good examples of where you've moved forward, or maybe even struggles where maybe you didn't move forward and you wish you had. So if folks want to ask questions or give examples, hopefully we can have a good discussion.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We really appreciate you being here with us today. I keep thinking as I'm listening to you, just to start us off, and hopefully folks have some questions to jump in. But to start us off, do you have any examples from your life where one of these principles was illustrated or really drove some of these ideas home to you?
In a previous job, I had an opportunity to become a partner. Leadership had been bugging me for a good solid 2 years previous, and I read the book Lean In, and honestly, that's when I was finally like, okay, I've got to get over this, and I've just got to give it a try. And so I did it, and it was not the end of the world, and it did help my career. Yeah, I mean, there were challenges, don't get me wrong. But that was me, doing exactly, that like, I'm not going to be good enough. And, like just being overly critical, and finally just decided, okay, look, all these other people have been bugging me for 2 years, supporting me, telling me, insisting, I've got to do this. And I finally did.
Yeah, and that's fascinating, especially because it's not like, oh, here's a job post and I'm not sure if they'll like me. That's people telling you, I do like you. I do want you to do this. And you still don't believe them.
Just like the example of Sandra Day O'Connor. You're exactly right.
Exactly.
Like she went through Congress nomination. Like what a gauntlet. And she still questioned whether she was going to be good enough. And she did it. She was a trailblazer. So yeah, that's the confidence gap. So sometimes, that's where I just said, I told my, the part of my brain that was holding back, I told that part, shut up and just move on.
That's excellent. Let's see. Mark, you had some great comments that I think were just directed towards some of the panelists. I don't know if you want to share anything.
And I saw somebody during the presentation raise their hand, but I can't.
I am unmuted. There we go.
We got you now.
Fantastic. Yeah, you know what? I had done some direct text to you. I realized I was not texting to the group, but a lot of it that you mentioned that was very insightful is that adult, biologically in its based form as we are, as I want to put this in a way that makes sense. If all the constructs that we have, all the buildings are gone, and it comes down to survival, we are designed in a way to where things are balanced out, where you were saying women will question. That is fantastic when it comes to make sure that there is a survival of offspring. It's why women will even criticize their husbands because they have a little bit of a, you're just doing it, but you're not making it perfect. But and that is a fantastic benefit. And on the other side, biologically, it seems that guys are just more, let's just get this thing done.
Yep.
Yeah. And where you were saying that there's the ability to push past that, the same comes with men. We have to push past at times our just getting it done and being perfect and creating that perfectionism. There's a balance that is placed within, I guess I would say, different circumstances. And you do your best as an individual to rise, whether you're the guy who just, lives the life of, don't worry, be crappy, or you are a woman who will think and ruminate to the point to where things don't get done. What's very surprising, though, is that when I was reading some information in psychology today on this thing that I posted to you, is that I guess the connection between the left and right hemispheres are much higher in women than men. What they find with people, I have an oldest child who's on the spectrum, is that is also, it seems to be the case, and they are very highly sensitive. So I guess what I'm saying is that these things that we have, I guess we do our best to overcome them, but work together and recognize them within each other. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's where you're right. Colleagues can help each other.
So yeah, that was it.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your
no problem.
comments.
No
Thank
problem.
you. Dawn, you had an interesting comment as well. Do you want to expound on that a little bit?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we gotcha.
So just thinking in every day-to-day life, we work with a lot of different people in the office, different personalities and different traits. And you think about all of these issues and how it boils down to the way we do work. I've had bosses who would stay until late at night because it just wasn't good enough. And they're rewriting things. They'll never be able to bill that time. It's way beyond the scope of work. And that drive for perfection, whether it's I want to make it perfect and I'm going to make sure that every bit of the formatting is correct, or there are no misspellings, to, well, we got to give more, otherwise we're not showing added value. All that stuff boils down to, we have a contract. We gave them a scope of work. So if we don't complete the scope of work, that's a problem. That's a failure on our part, that we didn't do everything we said we were going to do. But if we give way over the scope of work, that's a failure too. That you then burned up, whether it's time, energy, resources, etc., by over giving. And then that expectation is going to be there for the next project too. You'll never be able to catch up to that. And you've, mentally burned out people, or physically burned them out by staying there until 11 o'clock at night. That was just it was a great presentation, Kelly. I really am so proud of you to do this, and so appreciative of Stantec having both Anna and Kelly participating in this. So thank you to you both, and thank you, Stantec.
And again, just to have a great conversation and help people understand, knowledge is power. I mean, I'm sorry, that's the after school special message that I remember, but knowing about this, understanding it, means that if we want to, we can try and change our behavior, do better in business.
Absolutely. And then the more we understand our coworkers and their basic personalities, and what can you change and what can you not change, it's just going to make a much better working atmosphere.
Thanks, Don. Charles Tiller asked, will the presenter be offering more thoughts on how allies can participate in helping colleagues to close the confidence gap? Anything else to add there, Kelly?
I mean, as allies, maybe at least if you're not comfortable, for example, asking somebody, hey, are you struggling? Maybe point people to more of these resources, and this is just a quick summary, right? Start out with, for example, reading that first article on the resources page. It's pretty long, but I found it just absolutely enlightening. I mean, like I said, the nature versus nurture, the nature stuff like Mark was talking about, I mean, there's just biology we can't change. But if we understand it, hopefully we can help literally just overrule it and say, I don't care if my fear center's going nuts. I'm going to do this anyway. And the nurture stuff. I don't have kids, but I know some like cousins and people with young kids, and it's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we don't treat girls with kid gloves on the playground. And maybe it's okay that they get pushed down and they have to learn how to roughhouse and things like that. And literally, it seems small, encourage girls to stay in sports. But again, in the business world, as allies, if you see a colleague struggling, what can you do? Can you have an independent conversation? Can you turn those folks over to some of these other resources? Can you yourself look at some of these resources and even get, more concrete tips? I mean, it just depends on the situation, but we definitely, the more support from allies, the better. I mean, like I said, there's the research that shows if women are told that they did well, regardless of whether they did well, they did this two test thing, regardless of their actual performance on the first test, they would do better on the second test. So literally just telling somebody who's suffering from a lack of confidence, telling them, I have confidence in you. I think you can do this. I think you should move forward. That sometimes will be enough for a woman to break out of the shell and move forward. And sorry, I keep saying woman, but anybody, with a lack of confidence.
Karen Jennings brought up an interesting point about this catch-22 that we often see. Can you speak to the backlash of women being considered pushy versus men being considered confident if we adopt this same confidence that men display, but we're not viewed in the same way for doing so?
Yeah, it's and like, what's the other comparison? Bossy versus confident, or assertive versus aggressive. That's tough. And don't get me wrong, I've suffered from, the other side of that as well. It's tough. It's a line in the sand, and sometimes you don't realize you crossed it. But at the same time, if you're holding back from asking for a promotion or applying for a new job or whatever, you just, again, knowledge is power, and you have to evaluate all of the factors and decide, whether you want to move forward or not. And yeah, you're right. Overconfidence in a woman, you'll get blamed unfairly compared to most men. Unfortunately, that's a challenge. We could talk a whole nother, we could talk a lot about that. Sometimes I think that's where, again, colleagues can support each other. And, for example, if somebody's, oh, she's aggressive, it's like, well, no, hold on. She had some strong feelings and she stood up for those feelings. And, if it's good for the business, then, that's a positive thing. So trying to curtail that negative slant on being confident and, standing up for yourself, sometimes that can help, but it can also just be viewed as overconfidence. So again, sometimes it's up to allies to push back on people who will label, unfairly.
Yeah, and I think part of addressing that is the more folks who become educated on this topic and others in the DEI realms, the more we realize and can step back out of ourselves and say, oh, I think we're thinking this because of this bias. We're expecting a woman to act like this, but she's acting like this.
Yeah.
And just to be able to kind of take that step back and analyze what your brain is doing, and having that awareness is helpful. And then being able to bring that up and discuss it with other people, and to say, hey, I know you didn't feel like the way that she delivered that was friendly enough or nice enough, but can we just think about whether someone, if a man had presented that way, would we feel the same way?
Yeah.
Just talk about it. Bring it up and And the more we discuss these things and the more folks are aware of it, the better the situation becomes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is getting better.
Dawn, you have another one here. Do you want to talk about it?
Oh, this was actually as a presentation just the other day, and I mean, a big audience. There were probably about 500 people in the room, and it was an engineer speaking. And he went for the dig at the geologist after presenting his data that, oh yeah, for the geologists in the room, meaning that, geologists can't do math. And yeah, he got a bit of a chuckle, but after it also raised people's hackles. I mean, someone came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe he said that. Aren't we past this, engineers taking digs at geologists sort of joke?" So, I mean, this was the example of saying something and people remembering it. And you say something, for example, to a child, whether it's something that is very positive, you did a great job, or whatever, they're going to remember that in glowing terms their whole life, as opposed to, oh my God, you are terrible at math. They're going to remember that too, and they're going to think, oh, I can't do math. I'll never be able to do math. Allies can help by
Speaking
making
up.
sure that, watch what you say to people.
Yeah, it's a helpful subject to bring up anytime that you see a situation where you think this confidence gap could be in play. It's helpful just to bring it up and try to educate folks. Yeah. And Karen, yes, these slides will be available. We'll post them on our members only resources page, which I think I posted a link to early in the chat. See if you can get to that. Barb, do you want to share more about your comment? All right, so she says, thank you for this presentation. I wish I'd had more of this kind of support and resources when I started as a young geologist 5 years ago. It would have helped me a lot. I had great colleagues and lackluster ones. And it was one male colleague that really set a pace for me. He was silent when a client asked, too many, scrolling up. He was silent when a client asked him in front of me, don't you have any women geologists? Those are tough teachable moments. Yeah.
That's tough.
Let's try to support each other as
Yeah.
often as we can.
Oh, 25 years ago. Okay. I was going to say, if that happened only 5 years ago, I just lost my,
Thank you, Barb. Yeah.
yeah, I just lost my faith in the idea.
I know.
of getting
Yeah,
better.
sometimes it still happens. Well, we're kind of up to the top of the hour here, so I want to thank everybody for joining and joining in on the conversation, and thank Kelly for presenting this really fantastic subject to us today. Again, you can look for the recording on our AIPG YouTube channel, and if you hang around just a second, I'll re-add those links for you to follow to the AIPG website. So thank you guys, everybody, for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.